Take a deep breath. Calm down. We're going to have a much calmer discussion this morning. Man, y'all were getting wild yesterday. Can't say that I blame you. Uh, let's do this thing. Welcome to Prepper Nation. I am John. Thank you for watching and listening, for shooting a thumbs up, and for hitting subscribe on the channel. It is truly appreciated. And Sandra Gotzi, thank you very much for sponsoring this morning's coffee. Mm, it's store brand, but still, I appreciate it. Just a quick reminder, we are going to be having an after party live stream for the folks in the coffee club and on Patreon. You should see the link populate in the community section for you coffee club folks here in about 30 minutes after the video finishes this morning. Yeah, chat was getting rowdy yesterday. And again, I don't blame y'all. Michelle Obama, I'm still shook, but we're going to have a calmer discussion, I promise. Okay. The most important preps for SHTF. This comes from the Organic Prepper. If you've never checked out that website, it's an awesome website. I go over there about once a week and I'll skim through the articles that they've had for the week. And I don't always agree with everything over there, but there's some good content over there, just in case you're interested. So the one I'm covering this morning, there was an article this week, and it was titled "Strategy and Mobility Are the Most Important Preps for SHTF." And this is one that I disagree with, quite frankly. I think they're very important, like everything else when it comes to prepping. But if I was put in a corner and I had to choose, somebody made me choose, man, what are the most important things? It would be spiritual prepping, mental toughness, and physical prepping. But again, everything's important when it comes to prepping. Look at it from this standpoint. A vehicle may look like $1,000,000, man. You may have a muscle car like old zombie farmer's got. He may have more than one now. I don't know. But I'm jealous nonetheless. But without, a decent air filter that's cleaned out or spark plugs, this thing just is not going to run. So, meaning, you know, a water filter may not seem like a grand slam prep, may seem like generators and things are more important, right? But if you don't have a water filter in a certain situation, that can cost you. So everything in prepping is the most important prep if you don't have it. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk about this article this morning and break things down, and be sure and leave comments in the chat if you don't mind, because we're going to have a rundown, of course, this afternoon here on the channel. So security and resources, they went into this. My takeaway is obviously you need both. They're breaking down, they're making an argument for why these things are important during SHTF, but this is something you should already know, okay? It's not going to help you to stack things to the rafters if you can't keep what you've got. If you don't have means to protect what you have, you're prepping for someone else. You're prepping for the first person that shows up and kicks the door in, right? Same thing if you're growing things outside. If you can't protect it, let's say you've got a massive garden. Well, if you can't protect that massive garden, if you have no means to protect it, you're doing all of this work and you're growing for somebody else, because eventually the bad people are going to find you. You need your stuff. Prepping 101, you need your stuff, but you need to be able to protect it as well. Um, and not even from the threats you might think. So let's say, for example, boots on the ground. We think of boots on the ground, we think of the North Koreans, for example, parachuting into the United States, or Red Dawn or something like that. Excellent movies, by the way. Go watch those if you haven't, especially the original. But I digress. The point is, chances are very low that if there's a boots on ground invasion, chances are very low, unless you live in a major city, that you're going to see boots on the ground. at least for a very long time, because the US military is gonna be fighting back, right? You're gonna run into other things. You're gonna run into other issues, specifically with security and resources. You're gonna run into the how can I put this? Resources no longer being available. If you have a gas generator and you see boots on the ground, there's a high likelihood that the gas is gonna run out at the pumps, or it's not gonna be available, and you're gonna be stuck with only the resources that you have, which again is very important, as to why you should be able to protect this, right? But also, um, the boots on the ground, if you're not seeing the people parachuting right over your head, again, you may never see them, other than what you're hearing on the news and the conflict. Let's say it's happening on the West Coast and you're over here completely on the East Coast, but there's still going to be threats. Just because you don't have North Koreans parachuting in, your neighbors potentially could become threats. People in your community, people that suspect that you're a prepper, they may become a threat out of desperation, right? Can you protect your preps when it comes to various threats? Your own government, your own local police department, maybe going around and confiscating and seizing things. Martial law may be declared in your area. You've not seen the first North Korean, so they're not the threat that's right in front of you. It's people trying to take your stuff around you, and it's a huge concern. They go on to talk about mobility in this article, and some people are just, and I understand this comment. I've heard this comment many, many times here in the community. I'm not leaving my house. I'm not leaving my castle. Quite frankly, that should not be your first or even your second choice anyway. You should try to stay at home if at all possible. But I would highly encourage you to be ready to go in the right circumstances, because we don't know. There are various threats around the world. We don't know what's going to happen. If you get news that a military, even our own maybe, is going door to door and seizing everything, what do you do at that point? The military, I'm saying, not zombies, the military. Do you sit on a couch with a 12 gauge and decide that's my final stand? That's not really a good strategy in terms of prepping, because prepping is about survival. Prepping is about longevity. It's about making it, out of the other end of the SHTF. So there may be a situation where you have to go, even though it's not your first or your second plan. So when I think about mobility, I'm thinking three things. Number one, I want to have bags ready to go. One bag for everybody in this family. We actually have five, and it's a four-person family. The fifth bag is all medical. All of the medical stuff is in there. My wife has packed that bag. She knows what to put in there. Then we all have our own bags, and they contain, food and gear and stuff like this, but I'm carrying the medical bag and the gear bag, that I have. Bags need to be ready to go at a moment's notice, whether it's 5 hours, 5 days, 5 minutes, you've got to be able to go if that situation pops up. Number 2, I wanna have predetermined locations. Now, this is just me. This was not specifically mentioned in the article. They're talking about your ability to move and get out into the woods, but I don't like the idea of just blindly rushing into the woods, even if you have gear, right? I want to know, where am I going? You know, I don't want to. There's just no reason to come up with a spot out in them there hills on the fly. Right now, while it's relatively calm, this is the time where you need to identify spots that are sort of concealed, far enough away that you're probably not gonna be found, at least not immediately, and you wanna have resources there, vital resources. Is there running water nearby? I'm not looking at stagnant ponds, I'm looking at, are there creeks nearby? Is this a well-hidden place? Can we camouflage here? Can we survive here for a while with what we have, okay? And you wanna have multiple locations. This is something that some people maybe mess up on, okay? And we all mess up on certain things. I'm not casting stones here, but I'm just saying some people have one spot picked out and it's to their north an hour, or a half an hour walk or whatever. Well, what if the threat is coming from the north? You're not going to walk through the threat and get to your spot. You're going to have to go south. So you need multiple locations identified and ready to go, along with your bags. And finally, I need information. I need to know where the threat's at, what the threat looks like, and which way it is progressing, right? This is where your emergency radios, your solar and crank ones, right? Because we talked about that earlier this week. This is where this comes in handy. All right. Is the threat a crowd of Tifas being rowdy? Is the threat a column of Russian tanks? Is the threat my own National Guard? This sort of thing I need to know. I need to know the approximate strength, right? I need to know these things. Which way are they headed? It helps to have information. So, the next topic over there was actually huge on this article, and it's something that I pride myself with at Prepper Nation. We don't do everything right here. I'm not Mr. Numero Uno Prepper, and I've been honest about that from the start. I'm not the guy that is going to take you out on camera and show you the best way and the only way to plant a garden. Why? Because I'm not a master gardener. We got some stuff in there. It's growing. We are not master canners. I'm not a firearms expert. The stuff that I have, I'm very familiar with. I can take my pistol apart, put it back together with speed. I know how to do it because let me just get sidetracked here for a second. My pistol of choice is a Beretta. What's up, Beretta crowd? If there's anybody else that likes the Beretta, they're just sleek and sexy. I don't know what it is. They're basic, they're sleek, and they're sexy. But anyway, I was messing with this thing when I first got it and, you know, pushed a couple of things. This thing fell apart into pieces. And I said, oh my God. I wasn't panicking, but I was looking at this like I've never put a Beretta back together before. And it took a while. But I got it back together, and then once I got it back together, I said, "Let's push this slide back down, take it back apart. This is how I learned to do it." It took a while, took a little bit less time, and now I can do it competently. Okay, so anyway, there's your sidetrack for the day, but what I pride Prepper Nation on is recognizing signs of the coming SHTFs. All right. This is something I'm very proud of here at Prepper Nation because sometimes I will use history and you'll hear me talking about parallels. Okay, this happened. This was rationed prior to World War III. Therefore, these same things are probably going to be rationed if we enter a World War III red hot. So these are the things I'm keying in on prepping, stuff like this, okay? Other times it's things like, God forbid, I'm not trying to go back down this hole, but having Ted Cruz coming out and saying it's almost guaranteed that Michelle Obama is going to be running. To me, this is an SHTF because I know where that's headed and I want to key in on ammo and stuff like this. So recognizing signs of certain SHTFs can lead you into a certain direction prepping wise. Okay. If you live in Tornado Alley, right, you want to prep for tornadoes. If you live on the beach somewhere, you want to prep for hurricanes. But there are other events that take place and other parallels that take place that would lead you to believe, for example, $33 trillion in debt. This leads me to believe, and no end in sight, nothing being done to correct this. This leads me to believe, along with the inflation we're seeing, there at some point we're going to see a crash economically. I want to be prepared for that. Okay. But nobody is prepared for every single scenario out there. If they tell you they are, they're a liar. There's no possible way that you can prepare for everything. Look at our own government. Look at all of the contingency plans our government has in place. And we got caught on the C-19. They didn't it was reactionary when it came to the pandemic because they weren't prepared for that. They were not prepared not only for the pandemic, but the fallout of all the regulations and stuff that they were putting into place, we're still trying to recover from that economically and not having much luck with it. So I would encourage you, and this is what I try to encourage here at Prepper Nation, you build a prepping baseline. Your prepping staples. Oftentimes I'll call them staples. Your basics that every prepper should have. You should have beans. You should have rice. You should have water filters. You should have some bleach on hand. You should have some alcohol on hand. You should have a medical kit. You should have candles. You should have, on down the line, the prepping basics. Start there. And then from there, you have to decide what kind of prepper you are because we're all different. Um, we're all in different situations. We're all in different climates. Again, if you live on the beach, you want to key in on hurricane preparedness more so than tornado preparedness or something like this. If you live in the desert, you're probably prepping for heat as opposed to blizzard conditions like you would in Chicago, for an example. And there are many different kinds of preppers. You need to identify which one you are, and you need to be honest about it, okay? Some people are bushcrafters. Virginia Bushcrafter hops in and out of live chat sometimes. He's excellent. He's the best I know of when it comes to going out in there into the woods and just surviving with minimal equipment, nothing fancy, but he can get it done. And there are people that are heavy into bushcrafting. That's their thing. That's who they are as a prepper. You have homesteaders, plenty of channels on homesteading here on YouTube, right? They're going to show you how to plant massive gardens. They're going to show you because they have farms and things. I don't have a farm. I identified this pretty early, right? Again, this is a channel where I try and recognize the coming signs and the coming SHTFs. That's what I try and do here. You have urban preppers who are experts at surviving city SHTFs. Total chaos within the city. They know how to survive in a city because it's wildly different than it is out here in the mountains. I'm just saying. You have your wise, thrifty shoppers. These are preppers that I don't know what it is about them. Domestic gangster comes to mind, but there are plenty of others who just know how to nail down substantial deals and stack to the rafters for pennies on the dollar compared to the rest of us. They're experts when it comes to canning and food preservation. If you're one of these people, you know you're one of these people, and that's awesome. They're stackers, just outright stackers. Their solution is I'm stacking everything to the moon and back. Um, they're doomsday preppers, people that are preparing for the nuclear apocalypse, people that are preparing for an alien invasion. They usually key in on bunkers and they're thinking 30 years or so. This is how long we need to survive. I mean, but most of us, myself included, and again, you got to be honest about it. Most of us are just average preppers, meaning we're average people. We've got family lives, we've got other things going on outside of prepping, but we still want to be prepared. We don't want to get hit with a tornado and not have anything. We don't want to get hit with a hurricane and not have anything. We don't want the economy to totally collapse and be sitting here like, what am I supposed to do next? Or a blizzard or something like this. Most of us, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being an average prepper, is what I'm trying to say. Nothing wrong with having that family life and preparing over here on the side. You don't have to be Mr. Doomsday. You don't have to be Mrs. Full-blown homesteader. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm saying that's not everybody's lane. Um, Alien invasion all the way down to job loss. A job loss can be an SHTF for people. I know people here at Prepper Nation that have experienced that, and they've left comments and they've told us, I lost my job. Thank God I was prepping because it took them 2 or 3 months financially to get back on their feet. And they had a year's worth of food stocked up. so they did not have to buy groceries during this time, and it helped them out a lot financially. There's a lot of scenarios to consider for SHTF. And again, I don't always get it right here, but I try to stay pointed into the direction of the most likely SHTF. The most likely for me right now, economics is bad, okay, and I think there is a imminent collapse coming, but election chaos is the next thing I'm pointed at right now. Election chaos is gonna be nasty no matter what. Prior to the election, post-election, it's going to be bad here in the United States of America. Um, but my biggest takeaway from this article, again, it was over at The Organic Prepper. My biggest takeaway was you have to have a plan. You have to have some sort of plan. You don't want to be somebody that has no plan. I mean, even if you're stacking stuff and you're buying stuff, if you're doing it without purpose, you know what I mean? If you're not if there's no reason for the stuff that you're buying, you're just buying it because you think it's gonna help you during an SHTF. Maybe you get lucky and it does, but you should have a plan, and every plan will look different. And that's okay. My plan is not gonna line up with another creator's plan out here. Their plan is not gonna line up with another creator's or another viewer's plan. Um, every plan is going to look different. That's gonna depend on where you are, what your finances look like, what your home life looks like, if your spouse or your better half, as I like to call it sometimes, is supportive of prepping or if they're constantly hounding you about you need to stop doing it. But you need to be honest about who you are and what your situation is. All right. Be honest with yourself. You don't want to homestead if that lifestyle makes you miserable, if it's just way too much work and you don't enjoy it, that should not be your end goal. You know, if you're cool with being an average prepper and stacking and being informed, that's okay too. You shouldn't be a doomsday prepper if you're going to be miserable doing it. You should enjoy it, is what I'm trying to say. Be honest about who you are and what your ambitions are when it comes to prepping, your situation, put together a decent plan accordingly, and if you do this, if you prep in this way, three things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to save money, period. You are going to save money based just on inflation alone. You're going to save money. Number two, you're going to save yourself a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress in this community, and a lot of it we inflict on ourselves. I'm not immune to it sometimes. I'll see things and I'll get stressed out a little and I have to back it off. But it would be stressful for me to try and be a homesteader when I know that's not who I am. Okay. And number three, it may actually save your life when it comes right down to it. So please just put a plan into place, be prepping. And if you have any questions, reach out. Y'all take care and God bless.